Hello and thanks for joining us for our mid-morning edition of Arirang News. I'm Mark Broom. Let's start with a look at the day's headlines. It's D3 to the Inter-Korean Summit, and today is rehearsal day for the South Korean officials tasked with making sure everything goes smoothly when President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un meet at the border. The US says it's going to continue its maximum pressure campaign on North Korea until it sees concrete actions taken towards denuclearization. This as Mike Pompeo seals enough Senate votes to become President Trump's new Secretary of State. Plus, terror in Toronto as a man slams a van into pedestrians. At least 9 people are dead and more than a dozen injured. The suspect is in custody. Let's start with preparations that are picking up pace ahead of Friday's Inter-Korean Summit. South Korea's presidential office says it will hold a rehearsal session at the summit venue in Panmunjom on this Tuesday to make sure everything runs smoothly on the day itself. Officials, including the presidential press secretary and representatives from the Unification Ministry, will go through every step of the summit, from the two leaders walking in together to the order of the talks. At the same time, the Inter-Korean Summit Preparatory Committee will operate its situation rooms on the 3rd floor of the Peace House in Panmunjom and another at the main press center located at the Kintex Exhibition Hall in Goyang, northwest of Seoul. Any problems or issues that arise will be corrected ahead of a final run-through on Thursday, which will be attended by President Moon Jae-in. And a working-level meeting between the two Koreas on Monday settled on some of the details for the summit. President Moon says North Korea would be guaranteed a bright future if it ends its nuclear program completely. Cha Sang-mi with the details.
Working-level officials from Seoul and Pyongyang met for a third round of talks to finalize the summit arrangements. The talks began at 10 a.m. Seoul time at Tongilgak on the northern side of Panmunjom.
North and South Korea held a third round of working-level talks prior to the Inter-Korean Summit that will be held in the Peace House of Panmunjom on April 27, 2018. They discussed security, protocol, and media coverage and reached a final agreement today.
The press director announced that President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un are to begin their historic meeting with an official greeting, and then they will hold the summit and an official dinner. Each side will finalize a list of participants and notify each other as soon as possible. To make sure that there are no embarrassing gaffes, Seoul's presidential office said Pyongyang will send an advance party on Wednesday to the South Korean side of Panmunjom for a joint rehearsal. Meanwhile, President Moon Jae-in has hailed North Korea's decision to freeze activity at its nuclear test site, saying Monday that it helps clear the way for the Inter-Korean and U.S.-North Korea summits to be successful.
지난 20일 북한은 핵실험과 대륙간 탄도미사일 시험 발사 중지를 선언하고 그 실천적 조치로 풍계리 핵실험장의 폐기를 발표했습니다. 남북 정상회담과 북미 정상회담을 앞둔 북한의 성의 있는 선행 조치로 높이 평가합니다.
Speaking at a meeting of his senior secretaries, President Moon said North Korea halting its weapons testing was welcomed by the entire world, including President Trump, who said this was very good news for North Korea and the world and big progress. He added that should North Korea continue from its nuclear test freeze to ending its nuclear program completely, the North would be guaranteed a bright future. And he said he hopes that happens soon. President Moon also called on South Korea's political parties to put aside their differences at least until the summit and work together for a permanent peace on the Korean peninsula and for peaceful denuclearization. Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.
Now, let's delve deeper into the schedule for the day of the summit. It's going to be a hectic day for everyone involved, as our Lee Seung-jae reports.
With the leaders of the two Koreas set to mark just the third Inter-Korean Summit in history, officials from South and North Korea have agreed to begin the summit on Friday morning and hold an official dinner in the evening. The South Korean presidential office says the summit will kick off with a welcoming ceremony for North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. It'll be a busy day at Panmunjom, as the third Inter-Korean Summit will take place over a single day in contrast to the 2 nights and 3 days of talks during the first and second inter-Korean summits in 2000 and 2007. But the biggest difference will be the fact that a North Korean leader will be stepping onto South Korean soil for the first time since the Korean War, with South Korean reporters given access to cover the event in areas on the North Korean side. South Korean media will show live coverage of Kim Jong-un arriving by car before being greeted by President Moon Jae-in. The two leaders are expected to walk hand in hand and cross the military demarcation line and head to the Peace House together while the summit will take place. Officials say an official state dinner is planned for after the summit talks, with a joint statement expected to be released after the dinner. Working-level officials are believed to have discussed whether the wives of the leaders will accompany them or if a joint news conference will be held after the summit. But sources close to the presidential office have declined to comment on those points. While Friday will be hectic, observers hope the summit will be a fruitful one, planting the seed of peace on the Korean peninsula. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, the United States says it will not lift sanctions on North Korea until the regime takes concrete actions to denuclearize, adding that the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign remains firmly in place. Here's what White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders told reporters on Monday.
We're not going to make mistakes from previous administrations, and we're not going to take the North Koreans simply at their word. Like I said before, and we've said many times before, the maximum pressure campaign is going to continue until we see concrete actions taken by, look, we're not naive in this process. We've seen some steps in the right direction, but we have a long way to go.
Those steps in the right direction potentially refer to North Korea's announcement last weekend that it will close its nuclear test site and cease nuclear and missile testing. The U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee has voted in favor of Mike Pompeo for Secretary of State. Pompeo now needs full Senate approval to be confirmed as America's top diplomat. Leading up to the vote, Republican Senator Rand Paul had expressed his opposition to the nomination, but he changed his mind before the vote. With Senator Paul's reversal, the panel voted 11-9 in favor of Pompeo. Pompeo, who is still serving as CIA director, met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Pyongyang recently to discuss matters before the U.S.-North Korea summit.
That is what I would have expected.
US-based North Korean monitoring website 38 North has downplayed claims the regime's Punggye-ri nuclear test site is probably unusable, saying there's no reason to believe it's no longer viable and the site is in fact still fully operational. It's true that the North Portal was abandoned after Pyongyang's 6th nuclear test last September, but 38 North says new tunnelling continued at the West Portal through early April, which could mean that the tunnel is ready for new tests or operations have stopped due to the regime's thawing relations with South Korea and the US. 38 North added that the South Portal remains suitable for future nuclear tests. Next, we're going to move to our series of how regional players view the upcoming summits between the Koreas and the US and North Korea. And today we take a closer look at Japan. Having maintained intense sanctions on the regime and having no diplomatic or economic relations whatsoever with Pyongyang, there is concern in Tokyo that Japan has been frozen out of the recent developments on the Korean peninsula. Kim Min-ji reports.
Japan, within range of North Korea's short to mid-range missiles, has been maintaining a hardline stance towards Pyongyang. No trade, no personal exchanges, and that has put Tokyo out of the picture. There have been reports that Japan is being sidelined in the recent diplomatic developments regarding North Korea. But the country is stepping up efforts of its own, with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe visiting the U.S. And there's also speculation that a Tokyo-Pyongyang summit may be in the works. Tokyo has brushed off concerns of so-called Japan passing, saying the idea that the country is being left out is not true. Prime Minister Abe has stressed that close communication is taking place between the key players, and that Tokyo's approach towards North Korea is closely coordinated with other regional powers. In the U.S., Abe got assurance from President Donald Trump that any deal regarding the North abandoning its missiles should not just cover ICBMs, but also short to mid-range missiles that can reach Japan.
We could say pressure on the regime has brought it to talks, and Japan has been at the forefront there. But when it comes to the talks themselves, as Japan is not part of them, we do need to get information from the parties that are involved, as the issue affects our security interests. At this point, President Trump needs to take the lead, and Japan will likely support whatever the U.S. decides to do. Even though the talks are scheduled, we will probably maintain maximum pressure.
In fact, Japan has been calling on both South Korea and the U.S. not to lift sanctions despite the recent sense of optimism. Given North Korea's past behavior, there are voices in Japan warning that there needs to be a clear definition of what constitutes denuclearization for concrete outcomes to be achieved.
There have been many great agreements and treaties in the past. None of the promises were kept. If some sort of compromise is reached this time, there needs to be a system that oversees whether the agreement is being abided by. For instance, we could set the time frame by which goals have to be achieved.
Further down the road, experts say Japan will have its cards to play, because in exchange for denuclearization, the regime will likely have its own demands, and meeting those demands will require concerted efforts.
Ensuring the security of the North Korean regime is not something the U.S. can do alone. This is where South Korea and Japan come in to promote the North economic cooperation. What Pyongyang will want down the line is the normalization of relations, which will lead to economic support.
On top of that, Japan still has outstanding issues with North Korea, such as the abduction of its citizens, which has raised the possibility of a bilateral summit in the near future. But experts say that will depend on whether there are sincere, visible efforts by North Korea towards denuclearization. Tokyo also needs to believe that talks with Pyongyang would yield positive outcomes, especially at a time when the Japanese Prime Minister is mired in scandal.
If the Prime Minister met with the Kim Jong-un and nothing comes out of the meeting regarding abduction, I'm not entirely sure how the Japanese public would react to that.
Many Japanese experts on North Korea say this could very well be the last opportunity to deal with denuclearization. While on one hand it's an issue that needs to be settled by the U.S. and North Korea, they say neighboring countries like South Korea and Japan will also have to well play the role of advisors to bring about positive and sustainable developments on the way. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News, Tokyo.
Now, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has reportedly visited the Chinese embassy in Pyongyang after a deadly bus crash that killed 32 Chinese tourists and critically injured 2 others. North Korea's state-run media reported Tuesday that Kim personally visited the embassy to express his deep sympathy over the accident that happened in Hwanghae-Bukdo province on Sunday night. The agency said, quote, "The unexpected accident brought bitter sorrow to his heart, and he couldn't control his grief at the thought of the bereaved families who lost their blood relatives." Kim also visited the hospital where the injured are being treated. Chinese President Xi Jinping has requested the Chinese Foreign Ministry and the embassy in North Korea to use all necessary means to care for the injured. 4 North Koreans also died in that crash. Now, the saying, when it rains, it pours, seems apt for Korean Air at the moment, as the airline is facing yet another PR disaster. Video has emerged that appears to show the wife of the airline's CEO lashing out at construction workers. The footage has further inflamed the mounting public outcry against the family's arrogant and violent attitudes. Kim Hyo-sun with the details.
A video showing a woman presumed to be the wife of Korean Air chairman Cho Yang-ho abusing workers at a construction site was broadcast on Monday by a local news outlet. In the video, the middle-aged woman believed to be Cho's wife and director of the Ilu Foundation, Lee Myung-hee, is seen kicking construction materials and physically abusing a worker by pulling her arm and pushing her. According to the person who handed the video to the news outlet, the clip was recorded in May of 2014 at the construction site for Incheon Hyatt Hotel, which belongs to Hanjin Group, parent of Korean Air. While Korean Air staff have confirmed that the woman in the video is indeed Lee Myung-hee, an official statement from the airline says it's hard to confirm. If the woman in the clip is proven to be Lee, an ongoing investigation into her behavior could be turned into a formal one. Police were already carrying out a preliminary probe against Lee for alleged physical and verbal violence against a construction team who were hired to renovate her Seoul residence in 2013. Lee's two daughters, Cho Hyuna and Cho Hyun-min, recently stepped down from their executive positions at Korean Air amid mounting accusations of violent behavior and abuse of power. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
Now, the Labour management of GM Korea finally reached an agreement on Monday over their months-long row over restructuring plans. With the breakthrough, the cash-strapped automaker can avoid the worst-case scenario of filing for court receivership, at least for now. Kim Mo-gyun with the details.
General Motors Korea has managed to avoid filing for bankruptcy for now. Labor and management at the local unit of the U.S. carmaker tentatively agreed Monday on restructuring plans following a month-long row.
I want to thank both sides for going through the negotiations, especially the labor union for making a tough decision for the company despite having to bear with the pain of saying goodbye to their fellow workers. The company should never forget the great concession made by its laborers.
After a 14th round of negotiations, which began at 5 a.m. on Monday, the two sides reached a tentative understanding on major issues such as the fate of 680 workers at GM's plant in Kunsan in Gyeongsangbuk-do province, which will be shut down next month. The firm had initially offered the workers a 4-year leave without pay as one of the options. This proposal was scrapped as the labor union said it was no different from a layoff. Under the latest agreement, the workers in question will be given the choice of voluntary resignation or relocation to other GM factories in Korea, such as the one in Incheon, west of Seoul, and the one in Changwon in Gyeongsangnam-do province. The company vowed to continue negotiations for workers who don't choose either options and to form a special committee to discuss ways to normalize its management together with the labor union. Following the announcement, GM's executive vice president Barry Engel thanked the labor union and announced that the automaker will allocate production of 2 imported new models of sports utility vehicles to local factories to help stabilize their operations. The latest settlement seems to be welcomed by many, as the meeting with the board of directors, previously set for Monday evening where the firm planned to file a court receivership, is now cancelled, opening brighter possibilities for the carmaker to sustain its business in Korea. Kim Mo-gyun, Arirang News.
Former President Park Geun-hye faces another trial today, this time for charges of accepting bribes, causing government losses and embezzlement. Unlike her past trials, this is a formal trial that requires her presence. However, Park, who has boycotted all of her previous hearings, has refused to turn up for the trial. She denies the charges and declined to show up because of her health issues. Due to her absence, the trial will take place with only the prosecutor and the court-appointed lawyer required to be present. Park also faces her first hearing on the additional offence of misuse of National Intelligence Service special activity costs. Now, coverage of the 2018 Inter-Korean Summit, including the historic moment when Kim Jong-un enters South Korean soil and the talks between the two leaders, is all going to be broadcast live. On Monday, 4 companies, including Arirang TV and Yonhap News Agency, signed a broadcasting agreement for the summit. The station you're watching right now, that is Arirang TV. We are going to be providing you with English language coverage for the duration of the historic event. We will also support foreign networks and hold discussions with experts during the summit as well. The main press centre, that's going to provide simultaneous interpretation and press releases in Korean and English. The core contents from the event will be translated into a total of 9 different languages, including Chinese and Spanish. Now for a look at stories making headlines around the world, and we start in Canada. There have been multiple deaths and injuries after a man drove a van into pedestrians in Toronto. For more on this and other international news, let's turn to our No Adam. So Adam, information is steadily trickling out about this awful incident. What are we hearing right now?
Well, Mark, police say now at least 10 people have died and 15 others have been injured. The incident occurred at about 1:30 Monday afternoon local time in North York, in the North York area at the intersection of Yonge Street and Finch Avenue. The driver of the white rental van is said to have jumped the curb, striking a number of pedestrians. These witnesses described the horrific chaos that unfolded in front of them.
He just went on the sidewalk. He just started hitting everybody, man. He hit every single person on the sidewalk. Anybody in his way, he would hit. The bus stop, everything got shattered.
There was 4 bodies on the ground. Police and the ambulance hadn't arrived yet, but people were trying to revive them. Obviously to no avail. But by the time the police and paramedics got there, they tried again and didn't work. And so they covered the bodies, put them in body bags and taken them away.
The suspect, who fled the scene after the incident, was arrested after a tense standoff with police several blocks away. He is now in custody and being investigated, but details of the probe are still scarce. According to US media, he has been identified as 25-year-old Alec Minasian and is reported to have been known to Toronto authorities. Police believe his action was deliberate and they are still trying to determine what his motive was. The incident also occurred as foreign ministers of the G7 leading industrialized nations were holding meetings in the city centre. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau tweeted from Ottawa expressing his condolences to those affected. In other news, facing fierce anti-government protests, Armenian Prime Minister Sergei Sargsyan has caved into pressure to step down by announcing his resignation on Monday. He was voted in by lawmakers as Prime Minister just last Tuesday after 10 years as president. However, there have been days of protests in the capital, Yerevan, and other cities opposing Sargsyan's new role, which the public sees as a move to cling on to power. Armenia's opposition leader, Nikol Pashinyan, has called for a snap parliamentary election. He was arrested Sunday for demanding Sargsyan's resignation, but was released just before the Prime Minister's announcement to resign. Former Prime Minister Karen Karapetyan has taken over as acting PM. Prince William and Catherine, the Duchess of Cambridge, have left hospital after welcoming their 3rd child and 2nd son. They left St Mary's Hospital in London on Monday, just 7 hours after Catherine gave birth. The newest arrival to the royal family weighs just under 4 kilograms and is yet to be named. He is 5th in line to the throne.
Good morning. The low pressure that brought heavy rain to the Korean peninsula is moving out to the east, so Japan will be rainy as it's affected by that system. The east coast of Korea will see showers until the mid-afternoon, while the rest of the country will be dry under cloudy skies. It was quite chilly yesterday and there's still chill in the air, but temperatures will rise today and the spring warmth should return by tomorrow afternoon. And for a closer look at today's daily highs, Seoul will get up to 16 degrees Celsius, while Gyeongju will be breezy all day with a high of only making it up to 12 degrees Celsius. But highs will jump to above 20 degrees Celsius starting tomorrow, with mostly sunny skies expected for the time being. With that, let's take a look at the international weather for viewers around the world. So most of South Korea will have clean air but under cloudy skies, while most parts of North Korea will be under mostly sunny skies with milder highs than the south. Meanwhile, those in New Delhi will need to brace for extreme weather, with sizzling heat reaching up to a high of 40 degrees Celsius. Sydney will be under mostly sunny skies on Tuesday, but the rest of the week is looking gloomy along with showers. Heading to North America, it's going to be sunny Tuesday in Vancouver and most of this week with comfortable temperatures. And as for South America, Rio de Janeiro will see showers with scattered thunderstorms at times. Taking you to Europe, Britain is set for heavy rain, thunder, and even snow following the mini heat wave. Have an umbrella handy for Tuesday if you're in London. Lastly, to Africa, most major cities will be under mainly sunny skies. And that's all the weather update for now.
Well, on that note, that's where we're going to leave the news for now. Our next bulletin is coming up at noon, Korea time. So until then, goodbye.